Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's story is going to take you on a journey full of suspense, courage, and unexpected bravery. Imagine being alone on a desert trail, exhausted and terrified, and suddenly a lone cowboy appears. He lifts you onto his horse, looks you in the eyes, and says, "You are safe." Who is he? Will she survive the danger chasing her? This thrilling, heart-pounding story is about to unfold, and before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe. Elise stumbled along the dusty trail, glancing over her shoulder with every step, as if shadows themselves were creeping toward her. The sun was dipping behind the mesas, casting long golden streaks across the valley, painting everything in a fiery glow that made the silence of the plains almost suffocating. 3 days of travel had left her exhausted, hungry, thirsty, and afraid. Her boots were caked with dirt, her hands scraped from brambles, and yet she kept moving forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, but stopping wasn't an option. She whispered a prayer for help, hoping someone, anyone, would appear before it was too late. And then over the ridge she saw him, a lone cowboy riding steadily, his silhouette tall and calm against the blazing sunset. His coat was dusty, his hat low, and he moved with the ease of a man who had survived 1,000 trails. Elise froze, unsure whether he was a friend or a threat. She didn't have the energy to flee, yet she feared trusting a stranger. The cowboy noticed her immediately. His horse slowed to a gentle trot, and his calm gaze met hers, steady and patient, without a trace of judgment. He nudged his horse closer and finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You look lost, ma'am." There was no menace in it, only a quiet strength that seemed to cut through the fear gripping Elise. Her voice trembled as she replied, I need help. I have to get to Red Creek. Please, can you help me?" He studied her, knotting the dust on her face, the tremble in her hands, the exhaustion in her posture. After a brief pause, he stepped off his horse with practiced ease, moving toward her with a calmness that reassured her instantly. "You're all right," he said. "Let me help you." With surprising gentleness, he took her arms and lifted her onto the saddle. Elise gasped at the unexpected strength and kindness. For the first time in days, she felt safe. He swung up behind her, hands on the reins, and said simply, "Hold on, we've got a long ride ahead." She clutched the saddle, feeling the warmth of his coat brush her back, and exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Trust wasn't easy for her, but somehow she felt it. The horse set off smoothly, cutting through the wind, carrying her away from fear and into an uncertain safety. The first miles passed in silence, broken only by the steady beat of hooves and the whisper of the wind. The cowboy finally spoke, his voice calm. "Who's after you?" Elise swallowed hard, then admitted, "A gang. They attacked our town. They were looking for people like me. My father tried to protect me. They hurt him." Tears welled up as she spoke, and the cowboy's jaw tightened slightly, but he remained silent, listening. There was no rush, no judgment, only a steady presence that made her feel she might survive after all. "They were chasing me," she continued, her voice breaking. "I ran when I had to. I don't know if they're still coming." The cowboy placed a firm hand on her shoulder, reassuring her. "You're safe with me," he said. "No one's touching you while I'm here." Relief flooded her, so strong it made her knees tremble against the saddle. For the first time in days, she let herself believe that someone else could take care of her, that she didn't have to fight or run alone. The horse moved faster, sensing urgency, and they left the ridge behind them. Night fell fast over the plains, and the darkness made every sound a potential threat. Then a faint cry in the distance cut through the wind, the sound of another horse. Elise stiffened. "They found me," she whispered, panic in her voice. The cowboy's hand tightened on the reins. "I hear them. Hold on," he said calmly, though his eyes scanned the shadows with precision. The horse picked up speed, pounding over rocky paths, the air tense with danger. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew nearer, urgent, relentless. The trail led them to a narrow ravine with a rickety wooden bridge stretching across. The cowboy guided the horse onto it cautiously, the boards creaking under their weight. A sudden shot cracked the air, splintering the wood behind them. Elise screamed, gripping the saddle tightly. With skill born of years riding these lands, he spurred the horse forward. The bridge trembled, but they made it across safely. At the far side, he maneuvered the horse behind a large rock, shielding her as another gunshot rang out. "Stay low," he ordered. "Don't look back." Elise's chest heaved. "Are we going to die?" she asked in a whisper. "No," he said firmly. "Not today." He aimed with precision and fired a shot that sent the attackers scrambling for cover. Then he urged the horse onward, weaving through brush and rocky terrain until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. Finally, he found a hidden canyon alcove, letting the horse rest while he helped her down. She collapsed against the wall, trembling. He wrapped his coat around her and knelt beside her, calm and protective. "You did good," he said, "braver than you realize." She looked at him, confused and grateful. Why are you helping me?" she asked. His eyes dropped to the fire he quickly built. "My sister ran from men like them years ago," he said quietly. "I wasn't there for her. I swore I'd never let that happen again." Elise's tears fell freely. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not your fault," he replied. "Tonight you're safe because you're not alone." They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the night stretching endlessly around them, yet Elise felt a calm she hadn't felt in days. By first light, the canyon glowed soft gold, and they were on the move again. The sun revealed the distant outline of Red Creek. Elise's legs were weak, but hope buoyed her spirits. "We made it," she whispered. He gave a small smile. "Told you, you're safe with me." As they rode closer, the wooden structures of the town came into view, and she felt the tension of fear begin to melt. Yet, even as the sheriff's welcoming face appeared in the street, a shiver of unease lingered in the back of her mind, because the danger might not be over, and the cowboy who saved her knew it. And as they entered the town, Elise glanced back at him one last time. His figure was strong, calm, and unwavering, a promise in human form. The desert behind them seemed endless, but now it no longer held fear. Only one truth remained. The cowboy who lifted her onto his horse had changed her life forever. Streets of Red Creek were alive with the usual bustle of a frontier town, wagons creaking along wooden roads, horses nickering in their stalls, and merchants calling out their wares. Yet Elise barely noticed any of it. Her legs were unsteady from the long ride, and her mind kept replaying every moment from the chase. She clutched the cowboy's hand as they reached the sheriff's office, the relief of safety still mixed with lingering fear. The sheriff, a stout man with kind eyes, looked up and smiled warmly. "Colton, you brought trouble again?" he asked. Colton shook his head lightly. "Not trouble, just someone who needed help." He helped Elise down from the horse, steadying her as she touched the ground. For the first time in days, she felt solid beneath her feet. The sheriff's gaze softened and he stepped closer. "You're safe here, miss," he said. "No one's going to harm you in Red Creek." Elise exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her. I thought I'd never make it." Colton placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you know." They walked toward the inn, where the townspeople were beginning to take notice of her. Some whispered curiously, others stared openly, but no one approached her aggressively. Colton stayed close, watching the edges of the street, alert for any sign that her pursuers had followed. Elise glanced at him. "Will they come here?" she asked, fear still flickering in her eyes. "Not a chance," he said quietly. "Red Creek is small, but it has friends who won't stand by if anyone tries." She nodded, comforted by the certainty in his voice. Inside the inn, she sank into a chair, exhausted. The innkeeper brought her water and a blanket, and for the first time she allowed herself to relax. Colton stood near the doorway, scanning the street through the open windows. "Rest a while," he told her. "You've earned it." Elise's eyes met his, and a question lingered on her lips, unspoken. Why would he risk himself for her? But the answer seemed clear in his calm, protective presence. Sometimes people do good simply because they can. Hours passed, and the town settled into its evening rhythm. Colton finally sat beside her, leaning back against the wall with a faint smile. "You're safe now," he said, "and you'll stay that way." Elise looked at him, tears threatening to spill. "I can't thank you enough," she whispered. "You risked so much for me." Colton shook his head. "You don't owe me a thing, you survived, that's all the thanks I need." She studied him, noticing the quiet strength in his posture, the unshakable calm in his eyes. Somehow, it felt like the first time she'd seen a real protector in her life. Just as they began to settle, a distant sound caught their attention, hooves striking the wooden road, deliberate and fast. Colton stood instantly, hand on his revolver. "They didn't give up," he muttered. Elise froze. "They followed us?" she asked, voice trembling. Colton's jaw tightened. "Seems like it. Stay behind me." The tension in the room was sudden and sharp. He led her to the back exit of the inn, keeping low. "We'll get ahead of them. I know the back trails," he said. Elise clutched his arm, heart racing, trusting him completely. They slipped into the alleys behind the inn, moving through shadows as the gang's voices echoed faintly behind them. Colton's eyes were sharp, scanning every corner, every doorway. "We can lose them if we move fast," he whispered. Elise nodded, adrenaline replacing fatigue. They ran through narrow passages, over fences, and into a hidden creek path known only to locals. The horse that had carried her before was nowhere in sight, but Colton's knowledge of the terrain became their greatest advantage. The gang shouted behind them, growing frustrated as their targets vanished. After nearly an hour of stealthy movement, they emerged on a hill overlooking Red Creek. Colton pointed toward a hidden cabin nestled among trees. "We wait there," he said. Elise sank onto the ground, finally catching her breath. She watched him survey the town below, alert for any movement. "Are they still coming?" she asked. He shook his head. "I think we've lost them for now, but stay here. Don't go near the town until morning." She nodded, grateful for his foresight and protective instincts. For the first time, she truly felt safe from the men who had chased her for days. Morning light finally broke over the horizon, painting the forest in gold and green. Elise and Colton moved cautiously back toward the town, using hidden paths to avoid any lingering threat. The streets of Red Creek were calm now, and the townspeople greeted them with curiosity and relief once they saw her alive and well. Colton led her to the sheriff, who nodded approvingly. "You're in good hands now," he said. Elise smiled faintly, exhaustion and gratitude mingling in her gaze. She realized just how much the cowboy had sacrificed to protect her. Over the next few days, Elise began to recover in Red Creek. Colton remained nearby, ensuring the gang wouldn't return. Slowly, her fear subsided, replaced by a growing sense of confidence and safety. She explored the town, met the friendly townsfolk, and even smiled again without guilt or worry. Colton, quiet as ever, would appear when needed, always just at the edge of her vision, a steady presence, a reminder of her survival. Every time she saw him, she remembered the first ride, the way he had lifted her onto the horse, and the promise he had made, "You are safe." One afternoon, as they walked along the outskirts of the town, Elise finally asked the question that had been in her mind since the night of her rescue. "Colton, why me? Why risk so much for a stranger?" He looked at her, eyes steady, and said simply, "Because someone once failed to protect my sister. I swore I'd never let that happen again. Not to anyone. Tonight, tomorrow, anytime, you're not alone." Elise felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by emotion. She realized that safety, kindness, and trust were rare, and she had been given all three by this cowboy. Weeks passed. Elise began to rebuild her life in Red Creek, her fear replaced by determination. The gang never returned, thanks to Colton's vigilance and the support of the sheriff. She found herself helping others, inspired by the courage she had witnessed, and every night she would pause and remember the ride that had changed her life. Colton remained her silent guardian, watching from the edges, his presence a comfort without needing words. And each time she looked at him, she remembered the moment he lifted her onto the horse, whispering, "You are safe." The day came when Elise finally felt strong enough to stand on her own, to step outside the shadow of fear completely. She stood in the town square, looking toward the open plains, and thought of the cowboy who had saved her, the stranger who had become her protector. And though she knew the road ahead would still have its dangers, she also knew this truth. No matter how far she traveled, no matter what trials she faced, the cowboy's promise of safety would remain with her. Because some acts of courage, some gestures of protection, change a life forever. And as the sun set once more over Red Creek, Elise watched the horizon and knew, deep in her heart, that the man who had lifted her onto his horse and promised safety had not just saved her life. He had changed the course of it entirely. The danger was gone, the gang defeated, but the memory of that first ride would echo in her mind forever, a testament to the power of courage, trust, and unexpected.